Okay. Hello.
Hi.
Yeah, another East Rocks conversation. Me and Lisa had a week off last week. Lawson and Suzanne stole the show with some barefoot chat. And we're back this week with another guest. So we've had Suzanne with us before, Suzanne Lang from Body Needs. And today we've got Abby Lord from Hypopressive Scotland to chat to us about all things hypopressives. So I'm Ruth Coates and I'm a psychotherapist based in East Lothian.
And I'm Lisa. I'm a coach at Go Train East Rocks and owner of Super Being.
And I'm Abby Lord and I am the Hypopressive Scotland Master Trainer for the whole UK actually in Hypopressives, which is a breath-led postural exercise program which increases your sports stamina, prepares your core and pelvic floor for greater foundational work and for sports. That's it, I guess. That's a roundup of what I do. What we do is very much breath-led to start with, breath-led and posture-led, ensuring that you're standing and moving in the correct way so you can get the most from your body and the connectivity. We work with fascia lines, muscle chains, and your diaphragm.
Brilliant. It sounds fascinating, and I know it kind of takes in. It's quite. It takes in quite a few different kind of. A few different areas of being human, I suppose, in terms of the physical and the mental and well-being and things like that, and also sports stamina, like you said. And we did have a session, didn't we? A workshop booked for you coming down to East Rocks. And I think it was probably a couple of weeks ago you were due to come down. So we're having this conversation as a kind of, not a replacement by any means, because we're really looking forward to you coming down once we're kind of beyond lockdown and everything. But just as a kind of taster for people to understand a bit more about what hypopressive is and how it can help them. So first of all, just wondering how you came to it yourself, Abby.
So I was I did loads of rock climbing. I'm originally a swimmer. So I used to spend my entire childhood swimming and rock climbing. And then a total gym bunny for years and years and years. I was never out of Leith Victoria swimming pool and the gym there. My speciality was free weights and anything as hardcore as I could get it. Rowing machines for hours on end, anything like that. I really, really enjoyed. And then I had my children, and post my children, I had a prolapse. And first of all, initially stress and urge incontinence, which was absolutely debilitating. I couldn't go more than 10 minutes. Sometimes if it was a bouncy road, 5 minutes without needing to pee. It used to drive my husband mad and my children. And then I discovered a prolapse after the birth of my second child. It was quite an extreme prolapse, so the prolapse was actually out. And I then was told by NHS 24 to keep my legs up for 24 hours, or well, until the Monday, until I could see a doctor. And then after that, during that weekend of hell, I found hypopressives. I had a conversation with a woman called Trista Zinn in Canada, who's now one of my colleagues. And she had a conversation with Tamara Rial, who's one of the designers of hypopressives. And she had a conversation with a girl in Edinburgh called Sally Scott, who's a personal trainer who'd done the level 1 training. And so I went to see Sally Scott. And I remember saying to my husband before I left, is there any point in me going to this? I've tried all these other things. Is there any point? And he said, yeah, you should just try it. So I went and I had a 40-minute session with Sally. And then I came home and I practiced for 2 weeks. And there was such an enormous difference after 2 weeks in my stress and urge incontinence that I went back for some more sessions. And then I found out they were running a training course in London. So I booked a place, booked a plane, and I hate flying. So all of this was massive. And went to London and did the level 1 training, and then came back here and trained. Then I did my personal training certificate because I realized I needed that in order to know more about what's going on. And then I started to train individuals like one-to-one. And then I built up to classes. And now I teach lots of men and women one-to-one, and my group classes are more designed for women at the moment. But that doesn't mean there can't be ones with blokes in it. And my one-to-ones the men tend to come to my one-to-one classes. And so now I have quite a thriving wee business. The NHS is starting to use me and refer to me. Osteopaths are referring. So you know, it's doing quite well, and it's doing well because it works.
Yeah, that's really, sounds absolutely life-changing on so many levels for you.
Yep. Yeah. I was teaching drama before. But yeah.
Nothing wrong with a bit of drama.
Yeah, I used to say. Yeah. So the hypopressive technique itself is a breath-led postural exercise program. It's multidisciplinary. So the training that we do is designed to fit into anybody else's training. So if you're a Pilates coach, you can bring elements of the hypopressives into the class. If you are a yoga teacher, there are elements you can bring into the class, or you can work alongside. So the yoga teachers who come and train with me, they tend to do a bit of hypopressives at the beginning or the end. The personal trainers who come to train with me, who have trained with me, I've had personal trainers from up north in Glasgow and places, they use it as a warm-up before they start the work, so that people are more present in their bodies, that they've warmed their diaphragm up, that they've warmed their body up, both more through a fascia and a muscle chain connection than through just warming up by going through the warm-up that you would do to prepare you for the exercise that you're going to do. So instead of having just a dynamic warm-up, you've got a warm-up that is led by breath. And we do a lot of things like rocking to create proprioception, so you're aware of how your body is in space and time, which is super important if you're going to go and lift weights. You have to know that when you're lifting a weight off the ground, that you know where you're taking it to. And if you've not paid attention to that proprioceptive level within your body, then you're not going to make good posture choices when you're working out. So that's how they use it. And then I have physiotherapists who've come who use it for all sorts of different reasons. You know, they just slot it into their practice wherever they can. So that's the journey that a lot of my trainers go on once they've finished training with me. And a lot of level 1s out there, and now we're just starting to do some level 2 training as well. So yeah, any more questions? Or I'll just keep talking.
You could just keep going, couldn't you?
Yes, I could, yes.
Just thinking about our East Rocks members, Lisa, is there a question around kind of?
Yeah, I've got lots of questions around what we do, and I suppose just maybe tell me a little bit about what it does for your general fitness. So you know what we do down at East Rocks. So we do a very, very varied functional training system that involves everything from running to rowing to lifting weights to sandbags to sorry about that, don't know what happened there, to everything else. And I think it's just how either maybe A, could that be incorporated, and B, how would it help our members?
So for all those things that you're describing, the breath work is absolutely key. So learning to work with your breath properly so that you're actually engaging the right muscles when you're breathing. And also so I'll start with that and then I'll come to hypoxic. So using the right muscles when you're breathing. So for a lot of people get stuck either chest breathing up here. They're only using the top 25% of their lungs. So imagine the capacity that they could have if they actually start using all of their lungs. So if they think about it, your lungs are mainly here at the back. So if you're not using your rib cage to breathe properly, you're not giving your lungs space to inflate at the back here. So you are only ever going to ever work up here. And that's why a lot of people get very out of breath very quickly. They might have great recovery once they're out of breath because they're so fit in themselves. But they could have much better stamina throughout if they actually learn to use the whole capacity of their rib cage. Now, for most people as well, when you open your rib cage, what happens is that if you actually open your rib cage during your breathing and you open it laterally to the side, like bucket handles opening, which is the way it's designed to be used, then what happens is your diaphragm stretches out the way. And when this diaphragm stretches out the way, it also helps to engage with all the other muscles. Now, if you think that your transverse abdominis muscle, so this is the big one that everybody standing on all my toys. So the transverse abdominis muscle comes round like a corset, and it attaches from your back here, and it attaches to the top of your pelvis and the bottom of your rib cage. And it comes round, and the striation on the muscle is this direction. So it doesn't connect bone to bone like this. Like most muscles will connect your biceps bone to bone, you know. This muscle comes round, and it actually attaches to this, it's tissue at the front. It's connective tissue at the front. And the connective tissue is almost like it's protected by your rectus abdominis sheath that comes down, which is your six-pack muscles, which are basically about keeping a connection between these 2 points but aren't about the strength of your abdominals. What the hypopressives does is, as you inhale and stretch out towards the side, what's happening is you're stretching, you're sliding your transverse abdominis muscles out the way. Then as you exhale and allow your ribcage to close, you're allowing them to draw back in again. Now the issue for a lot of folk with this is as well, is that when they're doing this, quite often people are a bit out of kilter with their alignment. So they might, for example, quite a lot often, men and women are a bit like this, forwards. You know, so they've got high arch behind them here. And the bum sticks out behind. And this is not about having a nice tush. Do you mean this is actually putting your whole thing out of kilter? So now when you're inhaling, you'll inhale naturally to the front, and you can't actually get this back inhalation going at all. And you've also got this now disconnect between your rib cage and your pelvis, which creates a disconnect in this transverse abdominis muscle. So this lateral breath, focusing on the lateral breath and the actual attachment between the rib cage and your ASIS bone and your pubic bone, it's like a triangle thing going on here. And when you do that, what you're doing as well, not just your transverse abdominis, but your external obliques, they come from here and they come down into here. So if you're actually working your muscles properly and stretching, it's almost like it does a little hug. It goes, oh, stretching high and then hug on the exhale. So it's like this whole area is being moved and manipulated by this breath. So that answers good. Now, hypoxic breath. So next thing. So that is helping to increase strength and also alignment and give you more body perception. The hypoxic training. So what we do during hypopressives is we do 3 nice slow breaths. We inhale, we exhale, we inhale, we exhale. On the final one, we exhale all our air, just gently. We don't push it out, we just allow it to exhale. Then we close off our mouth and our nose, but we keep our glottis open, and we open our rib cage as if we were taking a breath. So what this does is it takes our diaphragm from its highest point and lifts it higher, which in turn pulls your pelvic floor with it. There's lots of muscle connections here. There's one between your bladder and your medium ligament, and then your psoas muscle coming down the bottom, back through your bottom and into your femur at the front. And what it does here is when you do this rib opening, you're holding with no air. And because we're putting you in poses that create stress in your body, your muscles are having to work a lot harder with residual oxygen, which is like what top athletes do when they do hypoxic training, but we're doing it at a smaller, kind of more micro level. And this helps to increase your sports stamina as well. So you've got the combination of actually standing properly so you can get greater space in your rib cage, which creates greater space for your lungs to inflate and deflate. And then on top of that, you have this hypoxic training, which is training your muscles to work harder with less. Does that answer the question? Get my ball back.
It's absolutely fascinating that, but it totally makes sense that you would want to have more oxygen in your body to be able to be more effective in your training.
Yes, so oxygen, the more oxygen you have, the more you've got the dispersal of oxygen throughout your entire system, the better your muscles will work. So you feed them the oxygen, so they're like, yes, I'm fired up. And then you take the oxygen away, and then they go, oh, crap, what am I going to do now? And then they have to actually work so much harder so that when you give them the oxygen back again, you're giving them the oxygen back again, and they're thinking, oh, I'm going to have to work better with this because I don't know when he or she's going to take this away from me. So it's almost like a reset for your like the 5-2 diet. You're taking something away and then giving it back so that your body actually is almost, like restarts itself.
Okay. Each
time you do it.
Wow.
I don't know about you, Lisa. Were you doing that breathing? Were you trying a bit of that breathing?
I was thinking.
I'll show you all at the end, so you all have a practice of it.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah. I'll talk you through it.
Also,
the next thing, of course, is the fact that you want to be mindfully prepared when you go in to do any sort of weight training or running or anything. And a good way to mentally prepare yourself beforehand is to really think about your breath and be in the moment. Sometimes it's really hard to shut out the world. And sometimes you go into running and you might be thinking about a fight you had or your kids screaming or this. And it doesn't mean that your sports fitness and you're going to get the best from your body that day because you're preoccupied with something else and not with the space that you're in. And when you're exercising and when you're training, you really have to be in the zone. You can't, if you're bringing stuff from elsewhere, you find that your performance is much, much poorer. So what this does as well is because it's breath led and you have to focus on what you're doing because there's so many little steps in the technique. that you have to be so super aware that it makes you much more mindful of yourself and of where you are. There's also the thing is that we're working with the vagus nerve, which is one of your cranial nerves, and your phrenic nerve, which comes into your rib cage. I know, comes into your rib cage, and also your pudendal nerve, which is down in between your groin. And all of these ones are to do with well-being and making you feel good, especially your vagus nerve. So this turns off any stress and puts you into rest and relaxation. And that's so super important just for life as a whole. Yeah, sorry, I got all excited again.
Yeah, that's the bit I was going to ask about next, was about how it supports mental health. And, you know, the bit that I'm really interested in is that being in your body. You know, it really encourages that. Is it, you say, well, where your body is in space is proprioception, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. And I think that just straddles the whole Eastrox well-being thing, is that people obviously need to have that skill in order to lift weight safely, but also it has all of these mental health benefits. Could you say a bit more about that?
Yeah, so it's used quite a lot. Breath work is being used more and more to treat anxiety. You have things like Relax Kids, which Emma does in Dunbar. And, you know, she's done quite a lot of my classes, and she uses a lot of really similar breath work, and some of mine now as well. Because what it does is it really ties in to it's the vagus nerve that we're really trying to get to. And your vagus nerve innervates all your visceral organs, most of them anyway, and the phrenic nerve as well. And when you start to do this, inhaling and exhaling and calming your diaphragm down, you calm your whole nervous system down. You're also working, sorry, I'm going to jump back again. You're also working, we're working with switching off your sympathetic nervous system and switching on your parasympathetic nervous system. Your whole idea of your pelvic floor and your whole groin region around here, this is all determined by your parasympathetic nervous system. That's what innervates it. It's one of the main things that shuts down if you get a fright or things. Everything comes to your core rather than your this is not needed, you know. So this whole parasympathetic nervous system and things is the thing that if you're really stressed and things won't be working properly. So you've got the cauda equinus, which is the horse's tail, which is what this is called. It comes down here. Your actual spinal column finishes about here, like about midpoint is where they put in the thing when you're having a bad birth and they want to like numb you. The nerves come out the back here and they innervate your whole pelvic floor and this whole pelvic floor region, and your pudendal nerve. And it's also a massive part of your parasympathetic nervous system. So when you do these breaths and you're breathing and exhaling, you're really allowing these nerves to work and switching onto rest and relaxation. I do a lot of it and you can't tell, but yes. It's about calming your breath down. The slower you can take your breath, the more you'll calm your system down. And most people breathe far too quickly, you know. So it's about, a lot of the times in my classes even, I get people to inhale, and it's nothing to do with hypopressives. It is about breath work. They inhale, they take a nice deep inhale in, and they hold until they're triggered to exhale again. And for most people, it's an absolute, it's like a shock that there's a really long period before your body needs you to exhale, you know, and then they exhale and then they wait for the next inhale. And again, there's so it's about teaching people that hypopressives is not a fast sport. It is a very slow, and the whole point in the slowness of it is that you're holding positions in a state of tension for a long period of time with no air. So the strength in it is different. It's a calm, it's a still strength rather than being something that's like boom, 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 fast twitch strength. We work with slow twitch muscles rather than fast twitch ones. And your slow twitch muscles are your stability muscles of your whole core. So there you go. God, I could go on about it. I'll shut up.
No, it's really cool. It's absolutely amazing. I suppose I'm thinking, you know, apart from the obvious differences in men and women anatomically, you know, apart from our physical differences, what then or how does this benefit both men and women, given our obvious differences?
So for men and women, we all want to have a really strong core and a really strong stability muscles. And strong stability muscles come from working these slow twitch muscles. And a lot of the exercises that we do, if we're running and all of this, they all use very fast twitch muscles. So what the alignment does and the work with the breath does is it calms that all down. and you're working with these muscles, slow twitch muscles need a lot less oxygen to be able to keep you standing for longer. So what you're doing is you're creating a really good foundation from which to, you know, it's like a solid foundation from which to spring the rest of your sport base from. So both men and women, we're looking at creating better sports stamina, you're creating a better core, you're creating a better pelvic floor, and this is important for men as well. As much as prolapses can happen to women, they can also happen to men, and they tend to happen to men, urine dysfunction and prolapses tend to happen to men earlier in life if they are doing things like lifting heavy weights and doing lots of this Valsalva movement where they're bracing into their belt. So you can get the same kind of brace or similar brace from an exhalation. So just doing a really good exhalation where you're actually thinking about what's going on with your core can brace your spine as much as breathing fast into a weightlifting belt. So it's about thinking about what's best for my body, you know. So for some people, once they discover the hypopressives and the way that you can brace using just your own body, they might choose to lift a little bit less weight so they don't have to put the belt on and breathe the Valsalva movement into your belt. So that Valsalva movement where you push into the belt, to create, and what it does is it's to create support for your spine so that you can lift heavier. It isn't necessarily always going to be great for your pelvic floor, because what you're doing is you're creating an enormous amount of pressure down the way. So what the hypopressives does is we look at how this whole area is like a pressure chamber. So when it's like Boyle's law and Pascal's law, it's all about pressure and volume. So nothing's changing in the volume in here, and nothing's changing in but the pressure's changing. So when we inhale, we're increasing the pressure. So if you're going to inhale and then push down, it's only going to go one way, you know. So it's like you're squeezing a tube. So if you have a squeeze of toothpaste, you're pushing down. That means all the pressure that you've taken in on that inhalation is all down here. So if you think about the pelvic floor is exactly the same on men and women. It's just there are fewer holes. So for men, there's still going to be the pressure on the prostate gland. There's still going to be the pressure on the rectal passage. And for men, it's rectal prolapses that get them, not obviously not the others. What we do in hypopressives is we train you to think about where the pressure is going. So if you open your rib cage wide and you use your back muscles here, you're creating greater space. And that means the volume spreads out amongst a whole canister rather than just being pushed into one place. So what a lot of people do is they hold their breath. So they go to lift a heavy weight and they inhale, then they stop breathing. And that stopping breathing creates pressure in all the wrong places. So you'd be better to inhale, and then you exhale, but thinking about a really good inhale and then a really good exhale. And if you do a good exhale as you lift something, you're already bracing because you're using these muscles to brace and hold your spine. So it's about the hypopressives, the way it would slot into things at East Rocks, is that it's about teaching people to learn to brace naturally and to make sure that they're using their inhale and exhale. Like a really good inhale will create a really great exhale, which will create really good tension. Yeah, I guess. I'll stop.
Cool.
It's just so interesting. I think we could just keep asking you questions and keep talking about it, and you could keep talking about it as well. I think that it'll be of such value to people who come along to East Rocks, and it'd really support their whole well-being, their kind of strength and ability down there, and also just how they feel in the rest of their lives as well. So I really hope that people listen to this and that they kind of come along to the workshop when we eventually do that, probably late summer, I should think. But we were, I suppose I've got a two-part question to kind of finish off, maybe, unless Lisa has any more.
No, that's great.
Yeah. Is that, how easy is it to incorporate? I think you might have given an impression of that, but also, can you give us an idea of like something that we can practice just now to get a flavour of it?
So I'm going to get you both to stand up.
Woo!
Okay. You're going to stand up. Now we're going to align your bodies up. So I'm going to give you space and time to get your cameras ready so you can think about what you're doing. Feet are really important, and Suzanne and I always bang on about feet. I bang on about feet all the time in my classes. So you're going to make sure your feet are pointing straight ahead. I don't want any angling out towards the side. This is super important because the position of your feet makes a difference to what's going on with your transverse abdominis muscle. And I've got a sonograph thing of one of my colleagues doing this sort of thing, and you can see the transverse abdominis muscle kicking in more when the feet are pointing straight in line with your body. So we're looking for the big toe to be in line with your knees, to be in line with your pelvis or your hips. Now your hips are not way out here, your hips are right in here. So it's about being aware of where they are. Good. Now you're gonna have nice soft knees. I want you to feel your big toe, your little toe, and your heel on the floor. Excellent. And now we're gonna make sure you've got a nice neutral pelvis. So you're gonna place your fingers on your pubic bone, men can do this too, and your heels of your hands on the top of your ASS bone. And make sure that they're nice and there's a nice line between the pair of them. So you're not poking your pubic bone forward, and which is what a lot of women do, they glute clench, and you're not poking it too far back, yeah? So it's nice and even. Now you're gonna make sure that your rib cage is directly on top of this ASIS bone. So you're gonna put your thumbs where your ribs are, and you make sure your rib cage isn't too far forward, you're not thrusting forward and you're not thrusting behind you. Good. Okay, so now we're going to put our hands just on the bottom of our ribs. And I could talk about head and everything, but we're going to keep it nice and short. Now what we're going to do is this. We're going to take our balance point from where it is, and you're going to take it forward onto the balls of your feet. Now you want to keep your toes nice and relaxed, and you want to keep your body still nice alignment. Good. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to do 3 nice slow breaths. On the third one, you're going to exhale your air, just the same as you normally do. You're going to switch off your breath. So you're not going to take in any breath through your mouth or your nose. And you're going to open your rib cage as if you were taking your breath. Now, a good cue for this is to think about smelling some flowers. So it's as if you're smelling some flowers. Okay, so we're going to try it. We're going to inhale. I'm going to count you. We're going to do 3 and 6. So inhale for 3, exhale for 6, and then you're going to open your rib cage. We're going to do 3 breaths first. So you're inhaling nice and slowly towards the side. Take your time. 1, 2, 3, and closing. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. 1, 2, 3, and closing. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. 1, 2, 3, and closing. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Close your mouth and nose. Don't take in any air. And open your ribs as if you were opening them to take a breath, but with no air coming in. Try to sniff some flowers. Hold for as long as you can. Now, the longer you can hold for, the better. The more residual oxygen that you're using. So we're looking for you to hold between 15 and 20 seconds. How did it feel? So, how did it feel?
Right, I didn't think I'd be able to do it at first. When I was sniffing flowers, nothing was changing.
Sniffing flowers cue works, or you can have, if people are struggling with it, the other thing you can think about from that point of visualization thing is to think about like you're trying to suck a glass of strawberry milkshake and there's a strawberry in the bottom of the glass. So it gives you that feeling of keeping the glottis open because you've got to be sucking through the glottis. You don't want to shut your glottis off because then it becomes like a Mueller maneuver, which is a different maneuver. So it's about keeping the glottis open and just using this area here. And the other thing anatomically to think about is the fact that it's this serratus anterior muscle that's trying to lift your, if you're coming from an anatomical. How did you find it, Lisa?
Really interesting. I suppose what I tried to do was think about what my ribs were doing.
Yes, that's another way to think about it. That's the way I think about it. But for a lot of people, visualization is a key to a lot of exercise. So that's a whole different topic.
So it does sound quite simple to incorporate. You know, once you have come along and spoken to us more about it, I'm sure that people will be able to incorporate it into their daily lives.
There's a whole lot of stuff to do with the poses as well, Ruth. You know, so the poses are all, they go from unloaded positions where you're standing and you're using tension. So you're pushing down through your hands, you're pulling apart but pulling in, balance points forward, so you're switching on your posterior muscle chain. You go from this position to a hinge position, which is a loaded position where they have to actually learn to hinge, use your back muscles, stretch, down into a quadruped position where they have to actually use shoulders and arm muscles to work. Then we do it with, they do the rib opening, and then they have to crawl, but keeping everything nice and, you know, and then there's ones where it's like a Superman. So these, but with no air, doing the rib opening, stretching out. And then we've got nice strong ones for the people that are feeling like they can really challenge themselves, where we actually use, instead of coming back like a downward dog in yoga, we load the shoulders. So because we want to crawl this forward. So they do their 3 breaths, their rib opening, and then they come up into this position, and then we walk it forward. So there's a lot of challenge in the poses themselves as well. But yes, you can, it all connects.
Yeah.
I just get really excited about
it. No, and that's brilliant. I love how excited you get about it. It makes me excited about it too. So yeah, is there anything else that you'd like to ask, Lisa, or do you think?
No, I am breathing it all in.
I'm feeling quite relaxed.
Yes, it's really fascinating, Abby, and it is, as Ruth said, it's just amazing how excited and passionate you are about this. And I love what you said at the beginning, that the reason why it is growing arms and legs for you is because it works. There's a lot of
work.
Yeah, science.
And yeah. And I mean, there are people, Trista's in trains, she trains people who are triathletes. So the triathlete there was one of hers in the video that I gave you. And then I've had extreme runners from Canada who, you know, post-baby got in touch because they couldn't get back to extreme running because of their pelvic floor dysfunction. And they've done it via online with me. And they've had such amazing results. So it does really make a difference to being able to get back to what you love. I'm not saying that hypopressive is for everybody all the time, but it is definitely something that can be there in the background, making sure that your foundation is going to be strong for the rest of your life, especially as we get older and for all of us connective tissue starts to have issues. It's really good to have something that's going to make sure everything stays connected. And so that you can keep doing your extreme sports for as long as you want. I think that's the important thing, especially down at East Rocks.
Thank you so much for chatting to us, Abby.
My pleasure.
And as soon as we have a date sorted, when we know we can do that, we'll let everyone know, and see you down at the box.
Excellent. Can't wait.
Look forward to it.
Cheers, guys.
Bye.
Bye-bye.